Get ready to take a flamethrower to the official narrative and learn what the elites don't want you to know. You're listening to The Tom Woods Show.
Hey everybody, Tom Woods here. Happy New Year. It's episode 2587 of The Tom Woods Show. And who better to ring in the new year with us than our old friend Dominic Frisby from over in the UK. Just one of the greatest guys you could ever get to know. I always describe him as a jack of all trades. He's a jack of more trades than I even knew existed. I was trying to describe, Dom, the other day, who you are to my eldest daughter. And I just kept listing. I said, well, I mean, he's a financial commentator. He's an author. He's a comedian. He's a screenwriter. He's a voiceover guy. He's a Bitcoin guy. He's a lecturer. He writes comic songs and parodies. He's a YouTube sensation from time to time. And I'm sure I left a few things out, but all the same, welcome back.
Well, thank you very much, Tom. And this is probably quite an interesting place to start because, we're recording this, just after Christmas, and you always get quite thoughtful over Christmas. And on Christmas Eve, I went to a family do, and my brother-in-law, I suppose he's still my brother-in-law. I was married to his sister, although we're actually now divorced, but he's uncle to my eldest two children, so on. He was heavyweight world champion boxer by the name of David Haye. And he was, I think he's only him and Evander Holyfield have been cruiserweight world champion and heavyweight world champion. And so, he's a brilliantly successful athlete. And I guess if you're heavyweight world champion, at the point at which you're heavyweight world champion, you are the number one alpha male in the world. I guess if that makes sense. And David was always incredibly focused on, I knew David since he was about 15 or 16, and he was always going to be heavyweight world champion, even when he was 15. And everything he did was geared around becoming heavyweight world champion. And so I remember, for example, one time about 5 years ago, we were having lunch and his son's a very good tennis player and his son was doing something else. And I said, it's very good that you're doing that other thing as well as playing tennis, because it always means that if the tennis doesn't work out, you have this other trade to fall back on. And I said this, and David went absolutely, he just went so cold and got so angry with me for saying that. And he was just going, what are you saying? And I was like, well, isn't that sensible precautionary advice? He was going, no. He has to know that there is no other option but to succeed. And then from there, I was thinking about, that is David's mentality. And I was thinking about, I'm writing a book about gold at the moment. And there's one of the stories, the Spanish conquistador Hernán Cortés, when he arrived in Mexico with his army, tiny army and just a couple of horses, and managed to conquer the whole of Mexico, defeat the Aztecs. And one of the ways by which he did this is when he landed, he had all his ships scuttled. In other words, they landed and then he sank all his ships. So his army knew that there was no other option but to win. They never had an escape. They never had a fallback. And that sort of singularity of purpose creates a certain amount of clarity and direction, and it also almost drives you to go on and be incredibly successful. And then you were listing out all the many things that I do at the beginning of the podcast, and I write a popular financial letter, and I did a lot of voiceovers, and I act sometimes, and I do stand-up comedy, and I write these popular comedy songs. And people often go to me, God, you do so many different things. You're so talented. I can't understand why you're not more famous, more successful. And I think the answer is that I've always just sort of drifted and done whatever interests me in any given moment. But I also think doing so many different things, I think I'm being slightly hard on myself, but I think one of the reasons, for example, I'm not an internationally known comedian is because I do so many other different things. There is, people like to pigeonhole you, know that you do this. But I also think it's because I do all these different things in case one of the other ones doesn't work out. I've always got this to fall back on. But in fact, that mentality of hedging yourself in a funny kind of way leads you to be less successful than you otherwise would have been. So it's quite an interesting, but I mean, you could say the same, Leonardo da Vinci did a million different things, but people are fine with that. But maybe it's slightly different today. I don't know, but do you know what I'm talking about? It's quite an interesting subject.
But I think maybe he was an exception. Maybe some of those Renaissance people were genuine exceptions, but I definitely hear what you're saying. And I mean, I'm not a jack of all trades like you are, but I do dip my toe into a bunch of different things. And so I don't focus entirely on the Tom Woods Show. And so if I did focus entirely on that, maybe it would be at another level. But on the other hand, I can see an argument against that I maybe I don't want to deal with everything that comes with having 100 million views of what I do. Well, I like the semi-privacy I kind of enjoy. But on the other hand, is that just me rationalizing my inaction? I mean, you can always go on and question yourself like this, but I did recently read something that a youngish American entrepreneur, Russell Brunson, wrote not too long ago, where he was talking about his path to success. Now he's well into the 8 figures, I would say, in terms of his income. And he's a brilliant guy. But he was talking about how he reached that first million and he thought, well, I had a business and it made $1 million. So I'll start another business and that one will make another $1 million and I'll have 2 million. And what he found was that after that second year, he still had just $1 million because the other business was a lot of problems and this and that. So then he thought, well, what if I had like 4 or 5 businesses? And what he kept finding was that he was getting it all wrong. That his absolute breakthrough came when he said, I am going to pour everything I have into this one successful business that's generated 7 figures for me. Because at least I know that one works on some level. Couldn't it work on a higher level and still higher and higher if I poured everything I had into that? And that was the answer. That was the answer. It wasn't, okay, I think I've hit a plateau and I'm getting bored with this, so let me go start another thing. I've been very tempted to do that. I've hit a plateau with this, let me go start something else. No, that's why in 2025 here, I have a membership that I'm going to pour everything I have into. Absolutely everything I've got into it, because it's the best, most important thing I've ever done. And I'm just going to, I've already made a list of ways I'm going to promote it, ways I'm going to persuade people that they're going to love it. It's unfortunately the kind of thing that you don't know you're going to love it till you're already in it. It's like Nancy Pelosi. You won't know. We can't tell you you have to pass Obamacare to find out what is in it. It's kind of like that. But anyway, onebucktrial.com is the website. But that's what I've decided to do, is to really say, because I had ideas for 3 or 4 different new things I could do this year. And I thought, doggone it, no. I have something that's really good and really important and doing really, really good, important things for people. So that's it. Okay, that's the thing. Not wandering along looking for the next little thing. This is going to be my big thing.
Yeah. Well, I need to write my resolutions and I need to decide what is going to be my big thing for 2025.
I feel like there could be some kind of really profitable Woods and Frisby collaboration on some level.
Well,
if we had a few drinks, we might think of it. But
it's coming. We don't know what it is yet, but we know it's coming.
Well, one thing that we know is coming, by the way, let me just say in parentheses, last time I had Dom on, we told the funny story of my having planned a trip over the UK, and then I couldn't go. Like the whole trip I had to just postpone indefinitely, but I had already bought really, really prime show tickets.
Somebody was scared that we were going to be invaded by Putin or bombed by Putin or something.
Some kind of crazy thing like that. So anyway, I ended up not going. And I gave Dom my tickets. It turns out they were better tickets than I remembered buying.
Yeah.
Well, lesson learned. Next time, plan ahead a little bit better. So just a couple of weeks ago,
front row seats for Les Mis and second row seats for Hamilton.
I know. I mean, come on. But on the other hand, the good thing is this solidified our friendship, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, I planned another trip to the UK, and I was all set. I got the tickets. I'm ready, and then I bought tickets for the new show put out by the Mischief Theatre, which does The Play That Goes Wrong, my favorite play in the world. Mm-hmm. And they have a new play. It's only playing in London. I have to go over and see it. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I can't go this week either. So I have to go the following week, but the tickets are non-refundable for the show. So I wrote to Dom here and I said, well, as per our tradition, would you like my Would you like my tickets? So there's old Woods. Not changing. Some things going into 2025, Dom, don't change. You know?
My life is so much more cultured for your absence.
I so loved that response when you said that to me. Have you ever had a year where at the beginning of the year you said, this year is going to be different in some significant way, and it actually turned out to be?
I must have done, because I do that every year. And then, it's just so funny. One of the disciplines I do in my newsletter, the Flying Frisbee, is at the beginning of the year, I write 10 predictions for the year ahead. And then at the end of the year, I go back and mark them. And obviously, when you're in real time, you change, if something's happening, you sort of change tack in real time. But when you plant something like a marker down, like the predictions, and then you have a year's gap, and then you go back and revisit the predictions, you can see just how much things have shifted in the year since you wrote them. So some of the predictions you get absolutely right, and then other things you're just wildly wrong. But because a year has passed, you just look incredibly stupid for having said that a year ago. But it's just, and particularly in financial markets, because the price is always there, and the price is like what marks you. So I think probably every year I've ever had, and the idea of a new year is it's slightly. Did you know? I mean, the new year, the first day of the new year used to be spring equinox, when the length of the days and night is the same. That used to be the first day of the year, and it's a much more natural time to have the first day of the year in spring, because spring is the beginning of new things. And it was only when the UK switched from the Julian to the Gregorian calendar in 1752 that we changed to New Year's Day being January the 1st. And so it's a fairly arbitrary, random date. But because there's the Christmas holidays and so on, it's a time of reflection, and you make all your pledges for the year ahead. So there must be years where things didn't happen that I thought were going to happen. And more importantly, things happened that I had no idea would happen. I mean, so much of life is, you think you control your life, but probably, half the things that happen to you have no control over.
It's true. So for instance, when you're setting a goal, I try to set them so that they involve things I have control over. So I don't say, I'm going to earn an extra X dollars this year, because I really don't have any control over that, because that involves how many people are going to be willing to hand over their money to me. I don't know that. Mm-hmm. But what I can say is I'm going to launch 3 training programs, and those will generate some money, but I don't know how much, so that is in my control. How many of those programs? So I actually set a goal for myself that I shouldn't have, because it violated that principle. I said that for my School of Life program, onebucktrial.com, I said, I'm going to increase the membership by 30% this year. And I did it. I think I increased it by 35%. But I have no control over that. What I should have said was, I'm going to post about it this many times. I'm going to make this many videos about it, and then let the chips fall where they may. It's like saying, I'm going to lose X number of pounds by this certain date. I don't really have direct control over that. That has to do with a lot of factors, some external, some internal. Well, what I could say is, I'm going to eliminate X from my diet, or I'm going to do the following few things, and then let the chips fall where they may from there, so that I feel like I'm in control of this goal, because the goal revolves around things that I myself can change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think that's really important discipline when you're setting goals, to do that. It has to be actionable things that you can do, not outcomes, which, yes, you can influence them, but ultimately you can't control them.
Right. So I wanted to improve my Spanish. Now, I'm not going to set a goal, I'm going to be fluent in Spanish by the end of the year, because I don't believe you can acquire fluency without immersion, and I don't have the opportunity for that. Mm-hmm. So instead of, having some kind of goal of that sort, I said 3 times a week, I'm going to do such and such program that I have that's really, really helpful in helping me improve. And it definitely did. When I went to Argentina, I was way more able to navigate my way around than I had been in Madrid the previous year. Mm-hmm. So that was the way to think about it. So don't set yourself up for, I also want to improve my chess. I did improve my chess, but I didn't say, I want to have a 1900 rating by the end of the year. Because I don't know. I don't know what's involved in getting to a 1900 rating. But I do know that I can spare X number of minutes per day, twice a week or 3 days a week. So specific. So it can't just be, the other thing is, it can't be and I'm a little bit repeating myself because my people on my newsletter list know that I have a goal setting program that I sell in December.
Oh, okay.
That does very well for people. And I talk about this, but I'm very much against goals that are very vague and open-ended. Like, I want to become a better chess player. Okay, well, how? I mean, if you don't lay out exactly the method you're going to use and how often you're going to do it, then that's just going to float in the air. Like, it has to be something that you can measure. Yes, 3 days a week I did do this thing. 3 days a week I did go take a walk. Things like that. Parents concerned about your children's education, traditional schooling not cutting it? We have a solution. Welcome to the Plumley Pod, your voice of reason for home education. Hosted by Sarah Plumley, head teacher at Gorilla Ed and UK National Examiner of Mathematics for over a decade. Mrs. Plumley's Rescue Your Children course is designed to ensure you navigate home education with confidence and ease. Craft a genuinely bespoke curriculum, uncover effective teaching strategies, and ignite your child's inner desire to learn. Ready to take back control of your child's education? Tune into the Plumley Pod and sign up for Rescue Your Children. Visit sarahplumley.substack.com to learn more. That's Plumley, Plumley. As Mrs. Plumley says, your children can either be educated or schooled, and these things are mutually exclusive. Choose education. It's time to rescue your children. Visit sarahplumley.substack.com.
What level chess player are you? Are you a 1900 chess player?
No, I'm not. I would say the problem is I stopped playing competitively in about like the year 2001.
Okay.
So the official rating that they have for me from 2001 is like in the 1400s, but I have got to be 1650 to 1700 by now. I mean, I haven't really put any effort into it, but I stay up with it. I mean, I play from time to time. And if I really worked, I think I could, certainly be at 1800. I just don't want to set that kind of goal. Yeah. But I'm the kind of player who could sit down with a casual player and just obliterate that person. Mm-hmm. But a really solid player will give me a run for my money and probably beat me. I did this year, or last year, 2024, I did actually do something I had never done before, which is on my YouTube channel. I confused all my subscribers who were on there to get this kind of content. And one day, I had posted a chess game that I had played in the past. I still had a record of it because when you play competitively, both sides mark down the moves in case of a dispute. So I still had this old game. And it's not a very instructive game because I blew the guy off the board, but I blew him off the board so elegantly that it brought me tremendous intellectual pleasure. And I shared it with the world. And I said, now look, I'm not an expert. And I bet some of you are going to find improvements in my game. And in fact, some people did. They said, you actually could have killed him even more if you'd played this move. But I felt like, I don't have to feel like I'm the world's foremost expert on everything. I'm very happy to be somebody who's competent, who admires the experts, who sits in awe of the experts, but is just a competent player who takes pleasure from it.
Good stuff. Now, Tom, I want to ask you a question, if that's okay.
You ask anything you like. So you can take over the show if you want.
So, like, I wrote this article. Are you familiar with the beginning of the novel A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens?
I am.
So it's one of the most famous openings of a book. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at what's going on either side of the Atlantic. And you mentioned Argentina there when you were talking about Spanish. And obviously you've got the US election with Trump. And I don't think Trump's particularly libertarian, but he seems to have, something's going on there because Elon Musk certainly is. And Vivek Ramaswamy certainly is. And, they really seem to have got the libertarian drug. And then we look at what's happening on the other side of the channel, on the other side of the Atlantic. And, we're lurching to the left politically, even if the people don't want it. That's where we're going government-wise. Government spending's increasing. The state's getting much more involved in our lives. And the same's happening across most of Western Europe, with the EU and so on. It's very technocratic, very high taxes, very low levels of innovation and all the rest of it. And so it's really like a tale of two cities, either side of the Atlantic. And I wrote this article all about that. And I'm just so excited when I go on Twitter and I read Elon Musk saying he's going to do this, that, and the other. I'm so excited about, that thing where you would talk to a socialist and you would go, well, socialism doesn't work. And they go, well, give me one example where they tried socialism. And you'd go, well, the Soviet Union, China, Cuba, Venezuela. And they go, well, that wasn't real socialism. And libertarians have always been able to preach from the sidelines and go, yeah, well, if we had less government and much less state and just let the free markets deal with it, it'd all be much better. But it was never, ever going to happen anywhere because government is so entrenched pretty much the world over that we're just never going to see it. So we could all, real libertarianism has never been tried. And then suddenly Argentina, it's just happening right in front of our eyes. And it's so important that Milei is successful in what he's doing. And it seems like he is being successful, but it's so important to the libertarian cause because if he is successful, the rest of the world's going to look at that and go, well, we've got to do that. That's what you need to do. And, governments copy each other. And then libertarians could go, yes, libertarianism has been tried in Argentina. And look, it brought this much wealth to the country and it turned it around and it did this, that, and the other. And that sort of, the fact that Milei was the first person that Trump and Musk asked to visit them, I think is in itself very telling and hopefully indicates where the US is going. It'll be libertarian light. But I'm so positive about, excited about the world with Argentina and America. Am I being deluded? Is the reality going to be that, three-quarters of the things they say they're going to do aren't going to happen and they're going to get blocked and the deep state's going to stop them doing this, that, and the other? Am I wrong to be this positive and excited?
Well, I understand people feeling that way, and I don't think you're wrong per se. And also, it's very understandable, especially for people who have had, the boot pressed into their faces for years and years and years. To see the prospect of it lifting, there'd have to be something wrong with you not to feel a little bit optimistic. At the same time, I know there are a lot of people who, I would say a lot, but a significant sliver who listen to me, who are so used to losing all the time that they cannot cope with winning. Like they have to. There has to be something wrong. Nothing can possibly ever work. So I wouldn't say that we've won per se by any means, but in the health area in the U.S., Trump's been good on the appointments for the most part. For the most part, he's been good. There's a fellow named Jay Bhattacharya who was nominated to head the National Institutes of Health, and he was basically condemned by name by more or less the previous guy in that very office. So that is like an unbelievable 180-degree turnaround. I mean, you have to be impressed by that. The very last guy you would ever think would ever get elevated to that position suddenly did. So some things can happen. In terms of the spending stuff, now, there are a lot of...
The problem is they might have got a good guy at the top, but if everyone underneath him is opposed to him, he's just going to be undermined and backstabbed and people are going to just be obstructive the whole time and he's not going to be able to do anything. Excuse me.
Right. That's a problem. But with some of the appointments he's made, they can clear out some of those people. And in fact, I have heard that now I don't want anybody to go on my recollection alone. I want you to verify this before you go around getting Jay in trouble. But I am fairly certain that I heard that Jay is considering saying, now look, I like to cut off all the funding to everything, but as a reasonable compromise measure, since I am a reasonable man, I would accept as a reasonable temporary compromise that any university that treats scholars the way Jay Bhattacharya was treated by Stanford, any university that spits in the face of academic freedom will have its funding cut. And so that will get people in line pretty quickly. And it's interesting because Stanford gets $700 million a year in research money from the federal government. And they have treated Jay, before COVID, he was treated like any scholar. They all recognized his merits and his scholarly work. But then when he was a dissident on COVID, well, of course, we have to treat him like a pariah. And suddenly, guess who is in charge of their $700 million? It's that guy. So that can change things pretty darn quickly. So, but on the so in the U.S., I would say some good things can happen. On foreign policy, with Tulsi Gabbard as director of national intelligence, I think some good things could happen. There are some foreign policy picks that wouldn't have been my picks, let's say.
Yeah.
On health, I think some good things could happen. There'll be more health freedom. And I do think that, and there are some reasonable picks for SEC and one or two other positions. And also, I think that Vivek and Elon will at least bring to light some indefensible things that it'll be a good thing to put other people on the defensive, having to defend at the very least. I don't know how much comes of it because, livelihoods and power and influence are at stake here.
Yeah.
And, there is a lot of reason to believe that people will turn around and gather their forces against any attempt to cut. So I don't know about
Trump is, he's a spender. He spent a lot of money last time, and he's got a big ego. And often when you have a leader with a big ego, they like to spend money.
Right. But I think he's also, in a sense, like George Washington in this limited sense that for George Washington, for example, when one of the earliest constitutional controversies was whether the U.S. should have a national bank or not. And Thomas Jefferson urged Washington against it, and Alexander Hamilton urged him in favor. And Washington seems to have concluded, he had just talked to Hamilton more recently, and Hamilton was over at Treasury, so he would know these things. So he was inclined to go that way. So I think Trump is kind of malleable in that way.
Right.
That, like he went from, I've never heard.
And then does what they say.
Yeah, because, for example, he went from, I've never even heard of what a central bank digital currency is, to we will never have one of those, because he had one conversation with Vivek. That's what I mean. So that can be put to both good and bad, that quality of his. So it remains to be seen where it'll go. Now, Argentina, I know there are people who are unhappy with Milei, or he hasn't done this, or he did that, or it's the wrong thing. And I can think of probably things that I don't support either. But I am this week doing an episode on a year of Milei, looking back on what actually was accomplished. And I was just in Argentina, as I said, and I had the opportunity. I have a good friend who has multiple properties. One of them is in Buenos Aires, and he happened to be there. And he is a very, very well-known investor and cultural commentator. And I was at his house, and I just flat out asked him, what's your opinion of the guy? And he said, my opinion is if he continues down this road, Argentina will, within a few years, be one of the freest and most prosperous countries in the world.
That's what
and if you look at a chart, in fact, the World Bank, was it the World Bank? I forget who produced it, but I do know the World Bank is predicting 5% growth for 2025 for Argentina. But somebody had a chart showing year-over-year GDP. And it was very, very much Argentina was very much an outlier, because there it was way in the negative, and then it had moved over into the positive by the time they made this chart. And that is continuing. And what I found out while I was over there was that the groups of people who love him the most, oddly enough, are the poorest and the young. And you would think the caricature would be, it's old, rich, white guys, in America who like Republicans, or, that's the level of sophistication. But here it's the poorest and the young. Because the young, I think, feel like they were going nowhere before. Like what do we have to lose by letting a guy with a wrecking ball come in? We have nothing invested in the current system. We have nothing to lose. Let's give this guy a try. I'm not quite sure things have gotten so dire in the U.S. that people are as prepared for such, for radical measure. We got a lot of broken things in the United States, a whole lot. But surely one of the brokenest is American health care and American health insurance. It's frustrating and expensive. Claims denials are becoming more common. And let me take a wild guess. Maybe something called the Affordable Care Act was misnamed and hasn't actually made your care more affordable. Well, that's why Crowd Health was created. It's not health insurance. It's a better way to pay for health care through crowdfunding. Because let's face it, your insurance policy is opaque and full of unpleasant surprises. Your premiums are going up every year. You wind up feeling taken advantage of. Crowd Health is doing things differently. For $175 for an individual or $575 for a family of 4 or more, you'll get access to a community of people who are willing to help out in the event of an emergency. You'll get access to telemedicine visits, discounted prescriptions, and so much more without doctors' networks getting in the way. Let Crowd Health help with your healthcare needs. Get started today for just $99 per month for your first 3 months. Go to joincrowdhealth.com/woods. Crowd Health is not insurance. Learn more at joincrowdhealth.com/woods. That's joincrowdhealth.com/woods.
Yeah, that's the thing I was in Argentina last month as well, and I absolutely loved it. We missed each other by, a week or two, unfortunately. But, I talked to, the taxi drivers, for example. I couldn't find one taxi driver speak badly about him. They all said he could be a bit more diplomatic.
Yeah.
But, well, no, they didn't all say. A couple of them said that. But on the whole, they love it. And, all the stories you hear about how cheap Argentina is. It was not cheap when I was there. Steak was cheap, but it was not. Wait,
what did you say was cheap?
Sorry?
What did you say was cheap?
Argentina 2 years ago, was a very, very cheap country.
Right. But I thought you cut out when you said it's not cheap now, but something was cheap. Did you say steak? I was gonna correct you on that, but you already said it. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Steak and wine is cheap.
Yeah.
But I'm just extraordinarily positive about the place, but I wonder if you need to get to rock bottom, as Argentina was, before you can really have libertarianism. But I mean, I maybe it's just because I follow Elon Musk on Twitter, but I'm just so excited about what he's doing, and he is the most competent individual alive, basically, and he's seems to be, he's going to clean it all up. And as I say, even if he only achieves 50% of the things he said he's going to do, it's still got to be incredibly positive for the US. I mean, it's never going to be enough to satisfy the idealists. Even what Malay's doing might not satisfy the idealists. But, idealism and the real world are two very different things.
Well, and now that he's been the pioneer, he's now set a precedent for future leaders of Argentina, that they're not wild outliers anymore. They're just following in his footsteps. They don't have to be the ones to take that first step because he's already done it. Now, one thing, so this was an interesting difference between Argentina, where we went last month, and Iceland, where I made my second trip this year, this time with a few of my kids. In Iceland, in 2 trips there, we've never once touched Icelandic currency. I don't even know what it looks like. Never once. And we were never once asked for.
You use US dollars?
Well, we use card.
Okay.
Its card is everywhere. It's like cashless.
Mm-hmm.
Argentina is not cashless. There will be places where it's cash only. There will be places where it's cash or card. And you may run into card only. But so that means, now it's true. Now, I was told later, you shouldn't have bothered converting your dollars into the Argentinian currency because they'll take dollars. But how was I? Look, their prices are all, none of the prices are in dollars. So so we did convert. The first thing we did was we went over to like Western Union. We got like $500 US dollars in Argentinian, I guess, pesos or whatever. And because that it's like $1 US is like 1,000 of theirs. Mm-hmm. And they have only small denomination bills. 20,000 is the biggest bill they have. Or no, they're developing a 20,000, but 10,000 was the biggest we could get. Mm. So we didn't even get those. We mostly got 5, 2s, and 1. So we're walking around, heading back to the hotel. It looks like we robbed a bank going back there with these stacks of cash. In fact, I took a picture of our stacks of cash and I sent them back to my adult children back home. And I said, we just so you know, we robbed a bank. But but that meant that it was easier for us to leave tips also, because in some places there's no line on the credit card receipt and you do want to leave it. Argentina is not as much like Europe where tips are not as customary. They are more customary in Argentina. And if you don't have cash, it's harder to do it. But I would say that when we went to restaurants, I would say that not just the steak, but the food in general was a little lower priced than you would encounter, certainly in an American restaurant. I can't speak for you. I remember when you came over to the U.S., you were shocked at how much we were spending in the grocery stores. So you may have it better than we do, but certainly compared to the U.S., I felt like eating at a restaurant in general was less expensive.
Oh, that's certainly true. The restaurants are cheaper. The U.S. is an expensive country at the moment. And I would say your food prices are at least twice what they are in the UK.
That's wild.
Mm-hmm.
That is great.
I mean, we have cheap food in the UK. Our food is cheaper than mainland Europe. I don't know why, but it is. But, my mum's in California. And when we go to that, is it Statons, the supermarket, Statons? I can't remember what it is. And there's another one called Trader Joe's.
It is.
And there's another one called Trader Joe's. And it's like the prices are twice what they are in England.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. Trader Joe's is a little different because it's kind of a niche kind of store.
Yeah.
And so even by our standards, it's expensive.
No, but there was I forget what the name of it was, but it was there was a general supermarket that just where you would go and you'd buy, your groceries, your fruit, your veg, your meat, all that stuff, your cereal and your basic stuff. And it was twice the price of what the UK was. Amazing.
I know you haven't sat down and thought through. I mean, look, I'll tell you something. I would never, ever want to sit there and make a prediction, let alone 10 for the coming year, right? Especially in your field, where money's at stake. I just wouldn't want to do it. But I would ask, in light of your confidence in Argentina, is that a place you could see recommending people put their money?
Yeah, I've been recommending it, for many months now, since the beginning of the year, I think, and maybe a little bit later. And you can invest. It's quite easy for Americans to invest in Argentina. There's things called ADRs, which are things you can buy through your broker, and they basically represent shares in Argentinian companies. And so the largest, oil and gas companies, real estate companies, their equivalent of Amazon, that kind of thing, you can invest in. But in the newsletter, we're very much long Argentina, and that those tips are doing very well.
There's a ticker ARGT, which I think is right. Yeah,
that's the sort of Argentine ETF. That's a really good investment. It might be a bit. You might want something a bit more spicy than that, but it's a good simple way of being long Argentina.
Now, by the way, I don't know what we're supposed to say here. We're not recommending that you do anything, and you could lose all your money. All right, you satisfied? Yeah.
Investments can go up as well as down as well as up.
Right. So we're not doing any of that. Yeah. Okay. So I was wondering about that because I thought, on some level, should I put my money where my convictions are, or where my own very reasonably developed expectations are? Mm-hmm. And with Argentina, it seems, but again, it could all go south tomorrow, and this could all be a terrible thing to say.
Tom, I actually think I'd go one stage further. I think you have a duty to, because as I say, this is like, if libertarianism fails in Argentina, then it'll probably fail everywhere. Do you know? For the libertarian cause, we really need libertarianism to work in Argentina, provably so that people can look at Milei's policies, economists around the world, and they cannot deny that slashing the state left, right, and center, and letting free markets take over works. And it's really important to the libertarian cause. And so therefore, as libertarians, we have a moral duty to invest in Argentina.
Wow. Okay. All right. So now that has nothing to do with gains or losses, people. You understand? Mm-hmm. This stupid FTC scares the heck out of me.
Sorry, I only said invest in Argentina. I didn't give you any specific.
No, you didn't. That's right.
Recommendations.
No, you absolutely did not. And you didn't promise anything other than ideological satisfaction. And I think the police will allow us to say that. I think that's still allowed over here. Do you have any?
Do you want? I've got a theory. See what you think of this theory.
Oh, please.
Okay, so when Javier Milei did his speech at the WEF in the spring, I looked on the WEF website, and his was the most viewed video that day, and his video had something like 10 million views from around the world. And then there was one where they put on his voice in English to sound like him, but in English. And that just went bananas on the internet. And everyone on Twitter was going, Milei's giving the WEF what for. He's telling them where to go and stuff. Anyway, it was something like 10 million views. The next most watched speech was Emmanuel Macron, 20,000. So there's a gulf between 10 million Milei, 20,000 Macron. Enormous gulf. And Macron is old world politics.
Yeah, and he's a robot, and he's absolutely uninteresting. That the best you can say about him is he's uninteresting.
Yeah, but he's a technocrat, and he's left of center, and you go, he'll do this to get that done, and he'll do this to get that done, and he's kind of like the French Tony Blair or something like that. He's old school politics.
Yeah.
And so my theory is this, that libertarianism and all the things that come with it, anarcho-capitalism and Bitcoin and all the rest, but libertarianism is the belief system of the internet, the dominant belief system of the internet. And you talk to people who spend a lot of time online, they're almost invariably libertarian. They've got a bit of Bitcoin, they like Malay, they like Elon Musk, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, there are people on the left who spend a lot of time who don't have that worldview at all. But you just look at, the funniest memes are all from a libertarian worldview, and they obliterate the other stuff. When the arguments happen online, the libertarian arguments always win. Twitter is an example of free speech winning. What Twitter has become, overthrowing all the censorship that went on under the previous owners. And so this is my argument. Libertarianism is the dominant belief system of the internet, but it hasn't quite spread into the real world yet. It will, because it's a growing belief system. And I just think the youngsters that are coming through now, who all get their information from the internet, they all watch listen to podcasts and Joe Rogan, and rather than go to the BBC or CNBC or whatever it is, CBC, whatever the channel is, they're getting their information from particularly young men. And so it's spreading into the real world, but it's the dominant belief system of the internet. That's my theory. Do you like that theory?
Well, I like the theory.
Well, do you agree with it?
Yeah, I don't entirely know if I agree with it. I want to, because so often something ridiculous gets said online, and then the comments section restores my faith in mankind.
Yeah.
But then other times I post something sensible, and yes, most of the time the comment section is great, but every now and then I look at the comment section and I think, has it all been in vain? So
but
it's hard to know.
I'll tell you what that is, Tom. That's when you're standing performing comedy to an audience of 100 people, and 99 people are laughing their socks off. The only person that you notice is the one person who's stony-faced and not laughing. And that's literally the one person you notice. And it might be that they're stony-faced and not laughing because they've just had a stroke or something. It might not be that they don't find you funny. They just don't have a laughy face. And I bet when you post that thing and then some of the comments drive you insane, you're ignoring the 99 other positive, sensible comments and just...
Yeah, I know. And that reminds me, by the way, of just a good thing to remember in life. We got this bit of advice when I was in college, when we were just starting. We hadn't even gone to our first class. And the bit of advice we got was, you're going to go to one of your smaller classes where there's going to be, quote unquote, class participation. And some of the students in that class are going to say brilliant things. And in your mind is going to take it as everybody in that room knew all those brilliant things and you did. But it was this one knew that one thing. This other one knew that one thing. And this other one knew that one thing. But we have this tendency to make a blob out of all of it and remind ourselves of how little we know and be discouraged. But just remember, that's not the reality. And the other thing I want to say is, did you ever see The Play That Goes Wrong, my favorite play?
I'm sure I did. I know those guys. I've seen other productions that they did. My dad used to love them.
Okay, yeah. So I've seen every Mischief Theater play that they've run. So they had The Play That Goes Wrong. There is a part where, if everything goes right, one of the actors breaks the fourth wall and addresses the audience. Because the premise of the play is they're trying to put on a serious murder mystery, but everything goes so horribly wrong that the audience is in stitches. And so finally, one of the actors addresses the audience and scolds them for this. This is a serious murder mystery play, And so there was one time when we were sitting in the front row, as you know, that is my customary place.
Yeah.
And a couple of our kids were laughing particularly hard, and so this actor singled them out and told them, "Little girls, stop laughing, stop laughing." And then he pointed out, he said, "Why can't you be more like this man? 45 minutes, he hasn't laughed once."
Okay.
And so he's able to actually make fun of the one guy who's sitting there stone-faced, because in principle, this is supposed to be a serious murder mystery. So it makes sense that he hasn't been laughing, and you should be more like him. And I just love the way they handled that.
Yeah. Well, there you go. And the same applies to the comments section.
Yes, same applies to the comments section. You know, I've asked this to, I have 2 or 3 stand-up comedian friends. I want to know what you do as a comedian when you feel like you've lost the audience. Like a joke bombed and now you have to climb back up to get their respect again. And it's way harder now. Have you ever been in that situation?
Many times. And sometimes you get them back and sometimes you don't.
Yeah. Okay.
I tell you what now, it's very hard. So there's 3 types of gig. There's the type of gig where they've come to see you. There's the type of gig where they've come to see comedy. Not necessarily you, they've just come to see comedy. And there's the type of gig where they've come to see neither you nor comedy.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah. You know, that might be like an after dinner speech or a Christmas outing or something.
Right.
And obviously the gigs where they've come to see neither you nor comedy are very, very hard. And you know, you have to work really hard. And whereas the gigs where they've come to see you and they already know you and they know what you think and they already know that they like you, those are the easiest gigs in the world.
Yeah. They're going to cheer for you no matter what. Yeah.
But the gigs where they've come to see comedy, but not necessarily you, those are very hard, particularly in these politically divided times. So, you know, a lot of comedy audiences traditionally are slightly to the left. If I go on and do right-wing stuff, they're not going to like me. So I have to be a bit judicious about which material I choose. And, you know, I did a gig recently in front of a lot of high-profile politicians. Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage and Liz Truss were all in the audience. And I was absolutely ripping the gig. Best gig of my life. I was king of the world. And I just went a bit too far with the material and just overstepped the mark a little bit and was like, crikey, I was doing this to there were 3 prime ministers here, or 2 former prime ministers and a potential future prime minister. And I just went too far. And I was like, oh no, I've gone too far. So, you know, it happens, but and sometimes you get them back and sometimes you don't.
Jeez, but you know, sometimes, Dom, you got to just go for it. You got to just roll those dice and go.
You do indeed.
Sometimes you got to just put it all on red and let that wheel spin, you know? So, all right, well, where should people go now after they've been completely charmed by Dom Frisby here?
Well, you've got 2 options. If you're interested in my comedy and my songs, and you know, they're very popular songs, and eventually I want to bring them to the US, then please go to frisbees.news, FRISBYS.news, frisbees.news. And if you're interested in all the financial stuff, theflyingfrisbee.com. And that's my financial letter. Or you can just follow me on Twitter at Dominic Frisby, and you'll find everything on there. A splurge of everything.
Tremendous. Well, as I said, when I get there next year, it will be, I still have to call. I just hadn't had the heart. I called the airline to say, I'm sorry, I booked the wrong, because the thing is, here's the thing. I mean, okay, everybody, you can turn it off if you want to. I just need to tell Dom this. You can turn it off and leave if you want to. But for this particular trip, I scheduled it for to leave January 13th, actually. And then I realized, no, that's my mastermind meeting. My mastermind meeting in San Antonio this year. I can't go that week. So I called them and said, I am so sorry, I made a mistake. Could we please do it for the end of April? Oh yeah, fine. Okay. I just haven't got the heart to call. So, look, this is it. I this time, if I call you again, I want you to just not answer. I want you to give the tickets to somebody else. So I haven't done it yet, but when I do get over there, this time I'll have, I have 3 adult daughters. 2 of them were there when I saw you last, but they were out on their own exploring. But this time I'll be just with the one who hasn't ever been there before.
Yeah.
That's my eldest daughter. And I want her to meet you just because you're such an interesting guy. So we're going to have lunch with her, and you are going to be charming and interesting.
I'd love that. And you know, I'll send you dates for my shows, but it'd be lovely, Tom, if you can come when I'm doing one of my shows. I'd love you to come. You'd love them.
Well, my plan is something like the week of May 4th, if that's that's not a Monday, but the closest Monday to May 4th is when I'm planning to be there.
Well, I'm doing a show on May the 14th. So if you were here on May the 14th, I'd love you to come to that.
Oh, geez, I wish I could make that work. Anyway, I'll go back and look at the calendar. So, Dom, thanks so much. Always a pleasure. I'll get those links up at tomwoods.com/2587. And those of you who are helping me out with this absolutely miserable YouTube algorithm by watching on YouTube, they will be in the description. So thank you, Dom.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, Tom.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Make yourself and those you love less vulnerable to the regime, both mentally and physically. Get more forbidden information at tomsfreebooks.com and be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. See you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.